Design development is more specific, where we get into selecting product, what type of plants, we get into the plant palette, and also a draft construction plan is put together. So at this point, I ask the owners to visit nurseries or suppliers so they can see what the materials are, that they want to select, and also collect images from the neighborhood of specific details that they like for styles, for gates, fencing. We visit suppliers together sometimes to pick paint and what type of pavers need to be picked. On some projects, the owner already has decided. So on this one, they already decided they wanted a play structure. So my role was to just put it together, talk to the city and find out what their requirements were. And so there was no construction drawing. It was just a matter of getting the supplier's detail and putting it together. And that would be part of leading up construction drawing. Construction drawings, typically irrigation, planting, and paving layout plans. And for the irrigation drawings, typically each city has their own requirement, but they all follow the state requirements. And it involves working with other sub-consultants. It could be an electrician or a plumber, or mostly I work with the irrigation consultant. And the last planting plans are where the plant palette is put together. And during this phase, a lot of the budget requirements have to be met, because usually I send it out to a couple of nurseries, get pricing information. And if the plants are too expensive, then we have to figure out, okay, do the numbers get reduced, or do the size of the trees get reduced? So this phase is quite decisive, because that's where a lot of the value engineering happens. And, before getting into construction, sometimes the contractor gets in touch with me and says, okay, we need to change these items. And so that's one of the pre-construction items. So in summary, the design process has to be well defined, and at each point, certain cost decisions need to be made, because there are implications if it goes beyond and you have to make changes later. And so design professionals, both architects and landscape architects, must educate their clients.
Just at some point, we can talk offline too, Kerstin, but I'm really interested in how you're doing with the all-electric houses and how you were talking to the clients about that, because that's like part of the whole HVAC and domestic hot water systems. And I'd just be interested in whether you are bringing in consultants early on or what.
Yeah, I definitely work with an energy consultant who is helping me with the energy compliance also, and have them come for a site visit and look at the house. There's oftentimes a discussion about solar. Do we want PV panels, photovoltaic panels? What would the orientation be? And it's also something that can be done later. The PV panels, you can do all electric without that. It's kind of almost self-running, that process, because City of Berkeley is starting to require it.
What about Oakland?
I'm doing one in El Cerrito. It's in planning. It's in building permit review. That's the little one that I was showing. And, it doesn't make a difference for any of the only thing you just need to do the energy compliance.
Yeah. Who are you using? Who's your consultant beyond
Ken Mueller?
I have a question for architectural, because a lot of times I get into the end of the project after the project has already gone through permitting. But a lot of times the construction admin process, the owner decides, oh, that's too time consuming. So as architects, do you figure that part into the contract at the beginning?
It's in my contract, and I give them a breakout for the different phases. So the schematic design phase is like 15 to 20%, the design developments, but 15 to 20%. Construction documents is 40%. That add up, and then there's another 15 to 20 for CA, and then there's like 5% or something for helping them with estimating and bidding. Do CA on most of my projects, and it turns often out to be a really expensive portion of it, much more than the 20%. It's just a little.
Oh, because of the delays in construction, and it extends the time.
Yeah, oftentimes there are delays. And then also, yeah, every time I touch the project, I run up costs, right? But also because if there's custom things done later, like these railings, it's really expensive. This requires a lot of work.
Yeah, sometimes when I do as needed CA work, I realize that charging hourly is pretty important because
Yeah.
I would have estimated that it takes like 2 months to complete the work, but then in actuality, it would have taken 6 months. So instead of going to the site like 3 times, I would have been there like 7 times or 8 times.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think both CA also schematic design really needs to be hourly. I actually do all my work hourly.
oh, okay. Yeah, for me, schematic design, I kind of I used to spend a lot of time where like I'd give them like 3-4 options and make a whole bunch of changes. Now it's like do the 3 or 4 options and then only present 1 or 2, so that they don't have too many options. It doesn't confuse them too much. And that way I spend less time making changes as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the 3 options you presented for that front yard. And just to show that it's like pick and choose, I like this, this, and then you put them together and then that's what gets developed.
Yeah, and also a lot of clients are very hands-on. Like that client was she couldn't understand the visual of the drawing, so she had to she laid out the entire walkway herself with the contractor. She didn't let the shape on the drawing. It wasn't like she followed the drawing. So sometimes some clients prefer to actually work with the contractor directly because they're like, they want to work through the process. So some of that flexibility has to be there. I've noticed when I provide 2 options and one is way less expensive, it's just decomposed granite with a few plants, and the other one is very nice, nice paving, nice plants, lots of trees. They automatically pick the more expensive one. And then sometimes clients will put you in a bind because they'll ask you how much is it going to cost. And so I made the mistake a couple of times of giving them a rough estimate, but then I realized that it's better not to mention the cost, just leave it up to the contractor. Just kind of say, okay, that's not my role. And even in my contract, I have a paragraph on the budget. It says that landscape architect's budgetary estimate is just an estimate. It's not a warranty of the price, because sometimes they hold you to that first price that they got from you, and that could be way off depending on what they pick. They could upgrade several things later down the road. So it's better not to say anything about cost right up front.
Yeah, I also find that it's like I try to get costs early on from general contractors for just when it's in design development, just when it's pinned down, and it's always really rough. And then a lot of stuff happens. The cost never goes down unless they would significantly reduce the scope, but mostly they'd be like, can we add another foot here? Can we have a steam shower? There's always like additional things that happen, and it gets more and more expensive.
I've got a client now in Oakland, and I have asked him at least 10 times, what is your comfort zone on this project? It's a major addition. He will not give me a number. And he might think that it's, $750,000, and I think it's 1.5 million.
Yeah.
And I'm really worried because we're at that stage where at DD and we're getting those initial numbers from contractors.
My experience is that clients who say, oh, don't worry, I have the money, they don't know what it means to have the money. That's what I found. That's oftentimes they have a quarter or a third of what it takes to do what they want to do. And it's a large amount of money, but they had like $700,000, which is huge, but they wanted to remodel an 8-unit apartment building and add a penthouse on top.
My
That's like $2 million.
Right.
It's really devastating for people when they don't want to, they have this idea that if I don't share how much money I have, it might be cheaper.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm actually not. We're not in the negotiating phase. We're just trying to we're developing the project based on the program and the existing conditions. And then we're keeping in mind what your budget is to make it, I can tell you like this is getting too big or whatever, we can't have these kind of finishes, or we'd have to do something very simple, it can't be complicated shapes. We can't have huge doors or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to get people to understand that oftentimes.
Yeah, I had a client in Atherton who they spent so much on their outdoor kitchen. It almost became like an ADU, like someone can live there. It's like so extensive. And then they just canceled the planting altogether. They just decided, there's a whole planting plan, irrigation plan, hydrozone plan. They just decided not now, 6 months down the road. They just put it on hold because they spent too much money on one part of it. So it actually impacts the end result, because when you go to that house right now, it's like everything, all the hardscape, the paving, the pavilion is all brand new, and the planting is all outdated. It's from the 80s, the old type of roses and boxwoods. So sometimes, I know that certain things are more expensive, but it needs to be balanced out so that the, other important things don't get value engineered.
Yeah, I think it's really sad to take the trees out.
Mm-hmm.
If you reduce on the planting, that's what makes the whole yard where your kitchen is so livable. If you remove that, then you just have, I don't know, a paved patio with the kitchen. And
yeah, it looks incomplete. You can tell as you go in, it looks kind of derelict because the planting is not, it's just completely not touched at all.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, it was very nice to have this, opportunity to present, and it was very nice working with Kerstin and kind of put together the two different parts. And I think we both didn't realize how much we know already, and we're like, okay, we need to get paid more because there's so much that goes into each phase of the project, and there's so many like different, variations to each job. Because in the beginning, when I first started, I used to do a lot of hand sketches.
I've always liked to make models, and so I just try to figure out a way to make them, to do it really quickly. So like here's one for a house.
Oh, wow.
So I just take the elevations and I print them on cardstock. And even if it's just a sketch, then I can just do, with architecture, oftentimes I can use the existing and then my new sketch over it, and I just cut it out. And the thing is, you have to do them in 1/8" scale. Once they get larger, size matters, they start to flop. And you don't know that much in schematic design. 1/8" scale is just perfect.
So it's like cardstock?
I just take a the thickest paper that goes in the printer, and I print the elevations onto that. And then I glue them all together. And this one, I did it on a weekend. The little models for the ADUs, I did, 7 or 8 models, and the first one took an hour, and then afterwards I can do like half an hour. I guess get one model after the other. Just it goes fast, and I try to be fast about it. Like we said, you can do a lot of changes in the beginning. You can do a lot of ideas, and then.
So do you ever hire a model maker or like a SketchUp?
Oh, for sketch? No. I actually would like to move my whole drawings away from AutoCAD onto SketchUp. I think I would like to do that. Just draw everything in 3D.
Yeah, I would like to move it to Revit, because Revit is so intuitive. Just making it in 3D, like you can see the detail and make changes to the detail itself. Whereas AutoCAD, you just literally have to start from scratch.
Right.
If something
But
changes.
I don't know Revit. Do you know how to use Revit?
Yes, I used to teach a Revit class, but I haven't used Revit in like the last maybe 3 years, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, so you know how to do it. It would be a total new start for me. So that's.
Kerstin, do you work entirely by yourself?
I do. I have one colleague that helps me with the drafting, like maybe 10 hours a week.
I was impressed with the amount of construction detail on the corner of the posts for the railings, and then you also have to know all the large scale picture for the whole project.
Yeah.
So big picture details.
Yeah, you have to go down to the bolts. You have to know, like, is this one recessed? You know, is that countersunk, or is it gonna be a bolt that sticks out? And how does it look at the rail? You know, will you catch your finger on it when you go down the handrail?
Mm-hmm. Do you refer to, like, because you're creating it from scratch? Do you actually have a model that you refer to, or like do you go to like a book or something for details?
No, this one, I worked with a landscape architect on a project maybe like 18 years ago. And she just had a guardrail that was made out of L angles. That was just welded. So, I mean, the only thing I know is I have a steel manual that has all the shapes of steel that you can get. So I use that, and then let me show you something. I'll show you how I do it. So I get like steel samples from steel fabricators. So like here's an L angle, like 2x2. And then I have the contractor make a piece of wood that goes on top. And then I tell them, like, so here's your handrail. This is the code, the maximum size the code allows you to have for your hand to grip.
Grip.
Start working with that. It's like a kit of parts.
Yeah.
And then you just go around the rail and figure out what happens. How do the posts connect? And if you have an L angle and they have a steel, it has to be drilled for all the wires to go through. And in Oakland, they wanted originally wooden posts, but you can't have wood under tension in Oakland. It has to be. So anyways, I'm getting way into, obviously, I guess I kind of geek out on those details. But it takes way too much time, so I'm a bit in trouble. I have too much work and I need help.
Well, actually, it's interesting because you want to work on, like a lot of architects get into furniture because they love to do like these custom details. And like on a couple of projects I worked on, the architect designed the furniture as well. The centerpiece in the living room, the dining table. And so it's actually interesting because it's like a specialization of within the field, to get into designing other things.
It's totally lovely. I've done, because, well, you start doing built-ins, like you start with the kitchen built-in. So then there's the kitchen, then there's a table, then there's a desk and pull out things and built-in shelves, and then TV things where the TV disappears, and you really get into it. And then there's not a far step to go designing a table or an end table or a console, and then you design cabinetry and then I ended up doing little stools with liftable lids where the kids could store their stuff in it, and it got upholstered. All of a sudden, it's all possible. The only thing I haven't done yet is a chair. I think chairs are tricky for ergonomic reasons.
Well, we should wrap up.
Yeah, right. We're over
time. But thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.